Hello, I am Christopher Lockhart.
And I am Ramesh Santanam.
And this is The Inside Pitch, a private Facebook group where screenwriters, creatives, filmmakers meet to ask and answer questions and exchange ideas and information on the craft and business of movie making. Happy New Year, Ramesh.
Happy New Year, Chris. How are you, my friend?
I am doing well. You know, I'm getting over a little bout of COVID.
I know. That's why I'm firmly ensconced in my house. And we have a snowstorm coming tomorrow that's going to bring a foot of snow. So
very nice. So good. So you just stay buried away. And if I sound a little nasally or a little hoarse or something, I'm really much better. I feel 100%.
Good. I'm glad. Yeah.
Again, you know, Ramesh, I traveled back and forth to South Africa and didn't get it. But man, you go to the jungles of Staten Island, New York.
See, this is what happens.
Just combing with COVID. So this is our first interview of the year.
Yes.
We ended with a bang last year with our big logline pitch contest. Savannah Morgan took home top prize. It was interesting, right? Because, you know, in the logline portion, it was the red carpet bodyguard that just took it by storm. And then there was a reversal.
In the pitch,
in you know, true dramatic fashion, there was a
reversal.
A great reversal. So congratulations to Savannah Morgan. Of course, congratulations to all of the finalists.
Yes.
We're going to be meeting them in our workshops. Which, by the way, we need to discuss.
I know.
I know. All right. So I'm very excited about our guest today because he has done something that that a lot of writers want to do.
Right.
And well, he managed to pull it off. And I got to read a script. You get to read it by any chance, Ramesh?
Yes, I did.
All right. And you know, it's interesting because it's like when you look at a Nicholl script, right?
Right.
Like I almost feel like any writer that wants to win Nicholl should read BYRON's script.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
Don't you completely agree? You know, the Nicholl competition judges on 5 categories. They judge on story, they judge on craft, they judge on voice, they judge on character, and they judge on meaning and magic. And each of those categories can score anywhere from 0 to 20. And of course, a top earning script would score a perfect score of 100. And BYRON does very well in all of these, in my opinion. But, you know, it's that meaning and magic. It's that meaning and magic where most scripts will score lower.
What is that supposed to mean, by the way? Meaning and magic.
Well, so meaning and magic. Meaning would be theme and its significance. So this is why people will often say, "Oh, Nicholl doesn't always reward the scripts like Taken."
Right.
Because they don't have all that much meaning. Maybe they're really great and they're fun, but in the grand scale of things, they don't have a lot of meaning. And then magic, on the flip side, can mean, I think, a lot of things. In this script specifically, there is that one element to it,
right?
You know, which is the kind of special effects element of this story, which is where all the magic happens. And it's really it's different and it's unique. And so I could tell you that if I were scoring this script under meaning and magic, I would give it a 20. And it
really has that magic in it.
It really does. And it's also very I mean, let's face it, it's pretty bleak.
It's bleak and it's freaking autobiographical.
I know. So we're gonna have a hard time. You know, it's like I'm gonna wear body armor with this guy because I don't know what we're in store for.
Oh.
You know something? Autobiographical scripts are truly the most difficult scripts to write, in my opinion. In fact, I have seen more failures with autobiographical.
Oh, absolutely.
Scripts. And you know, I remember when we were developing the Antoine Fisher story. That Denzel directed.
Right.
It was his first, I believe. And that original draft was written by Antoine Fisher. He was a security guard in a studio.
That's right. I do remember that.
And he passed it off to an executive, and it was eventually produced. But they had to bring in another writer to rewrite Antoine Fisher. They had to rewrite Antoine's autobiographical story.
Right.
Because a lot of writers, when they're telling their story, it's difficult for them to dramatize it. So it's going to be interesting to hear how much of this is sort of based on fact and sort of what Byron had to do to dramatize it. And of course, I want to hear all about his journey to Nicholl, and has the win made any sort of difference in his post-Nicholl win? It's only a few months, of course, but it is these sort of early months that I think are pretty important.
Yeah.
So Ramesh, you usually do the introduction, so I'm assuming that you have one prepared.
Yes, actually, while we were talking, I was like, crap, I forgot to pull up his bio. So, yeah.
Well, you know something, while you're doing that, let me just say hello. Can we just say hello to, let me just see anybody who is saying hello to us right now. I want to see Shiv. Hello, Shiv.
Yes.
Rick.
Shiv is the one,
Phil.
Shiv and Stephanie are the ones who wrote Red Carpet Bodyguard, by the way.
Yes, they are. Of course. Thank you. I forgot. Shiv, I didn't forget you, but you know, whatever. Hasty Dawn Words. We know she's got a personal connection, so we'll hear about that. Hello to all of you. P and Linda Frothingham. Hello, 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 hello. Hello to all of you. Bruce Gordon. Bruce, let me tell you, I thank God for that bulletin board thread, because Bruce would be lost. Hello, Bruce. Eve Hayes. How's it, Eve Hayes? Eve Hayes, of course, we love Eve Hayes. Eve puts together the screenwriting safari. If you want to go to South Africa in 2022, you better look her up.
I was actually
trip of my life. Ramesh. Go.
Oh, I was actually just watching cricket highlights from a match yesterday in South Africa.
Well, there you go. Chris Rogers, hello to everybody. Just wanted to say, just check in with everybody and say hello. I'm talking.
Okay. Oh, why is this? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I don't know, there was some static. Okay, so Byron. Born in 1977 on a Canadian military base, Byron grew up in extreme poverty, severely abused by his mother's boyfriend, convicted child murderer Michael Augustine Lopez. He moved constantly as a child, mostly living in the slums of Southern California, including a deeply influential period of his life in the Guthries, one of America's most dangerous projects in the 1980s. And an active Bloods and Crips war zone. Surrounded by everyday extreme violence and exploitation, Byron developed a high-functioning condition of complex PTSD. After escaping the hood, Byron made his way back to Canada, where he studied acting under his beloved friend and mentor, the legendary Pakistani-Canadian theater director Arif Hasnain. This was another heavily influential period for Byron, as it helped him reconnect with his own emotional core and taught him the value of deeper truth in character development. Much to Arif's dismay, Byron did not pursue acting, but instead formed a comedy music band and went on tour. When the band couldn't make ends meet, Byron took a job with CBC Radio in Northern Labrador. He worked there for 12 years as an associate producer and sound technician, learning journalism under his producer Cindy Wall, while also independently producing promotional videos. Living in Labrador, Byron reconnected with the traditional Inuit culture of his family. He was impressed by the resilience and toughness of the Inuit of Labrador, who survived the infamous genocide of residential schools and still live off the land today. Byron moved to Winnipeg, Manitoba in 2013, where he produced unscripted documentaries and lifestyle series for TV. Calling on his strength in journalism, he produced his first documentary film, A Cycle Broken, which is about tough bikers who protect abused kids. Clearly, Byron was invested in confronting child abuse. His next project was If I Go Missing, a short documentary which won a 2016 Bravo Fact Award. The film is about Indigenous teen activist Brianna Johnny, who brought to light the inequality of treatment for Indigenous children who go missing. In 2019, Byron set aside his production company to exclusively focus on screenwriting. His genre-bending writing is darkly poetic, violent, trauma-informed, and weirdly humorous, while folding in hope and fantasy. He has lived and worked in California, England, and nearly every Canadian province and territory. He's a loving father to 3 amazing girls. And he is one of the latest winners of the Nicholl Fellowships. And he's actually our 3rd Nicholl Fellow on this series, we had Jeb Stewart and Geeta Malik.
We have, but Byron is ours.
Yes, Byron is ours. He's our first. Welcome, Byron.
Hi.
Hi.
He's got the home team advantage here. Byron's got the home team advantage because he is an inside pitcher. So welcome, and congratulations on kind of capturing a little piece of the dream. You know, it's there are a lot of screenwriting contests out there, but this is the one that's sponsored by the Oscars. You know, this is the one that's sponsored by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, and it is hands down the most prestigious. And so I want to talk about all of that, and I jump around a lot, Byron, you know, so just kind of bear with me. But I just wanted to congratulations for even being here, you know, and surviving whatever trauma that you went through. And God, I would hate to think that much of what happens in the script really happened to you. It's because, just for our audience who hasn't read the script, it is harrowing. It is really, I mean, it's disgusting sometimes. And, but yet at the end, it's so life affirming, you know, and I was crying, you know, I was crying at the end of it. There's no doubt about it. And, you know, so like, that's what you want to do as a writer. You want to move. So you went right for the jugular, but an autobiographical story. So I don't even know where to begin. So just like, tell me about why you wanted to write the script.
I wanted to confront some child abuse things. You know, like our culture doesn't believe kids who speak out, for one. And our culture doesn't have something in place that actually will start rolling necessarily if a child says, hey, something weird is happening to me at home. And the kids who are going through it, they don't even know, because they think that's just life. They think that's just Tuesday. Somebody's holding you over a barbecue grill and they're going to burn your fucking face off. And that's just Tuesday, right? And I think most of the stuff that happens to the lead character, to the protagonist in the script, actually happened to me in real life. I put it closer together. You know, I put a lot of it closer together to heighten the drama of that. But I wanted to speak to that, you know, and I wanted to speak to the goodness of humanity. And it's kind of a call to action. It's kind of like a kind of a lesson to people who are abused, to just say, look, if you've been abused and you don't want to abuse your kids, here's one way you can do it. Laws of robotics. Fucking read Isaac Asimov, you know, and yeah, I mean, it asks that question, right? Like, love mode on, you know, do you want to put your love mode on? Is it yes or no? And I tried to make it like a really basic question that I was asking, but obviously it's a very complex story, and it goes back and forth. It contrasts very heavily between things that are quite mechanical and things that are quite poetic. And I guess that's where some of the magic comes from.
You're out, Chris. I can't hear you. Byron, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but not Chris.
Okay,
yes.
Is Felicia based on a real person?
Felicia was my landlady when I was a kid. That whole interaction with them that happens is real. Like, Felicia was my next door neighbor, and she was the person that took care of our shithole, like, roach motel that we lived in Palm Springs. And she was like this chain smoking kind of like, I don't know if she was foul mouthed, but she was a chain smoker. She had this mean dog Bucket who's also in the thing. And that tree that I climbed to get onto her house, real. All that stuff is real. You know?
Yeah, I mean, everything read real in the story, which is why I actually, oddly enough, I forgot that I had read your biography, so that when I read it and then when I opened it up again, like today, I was like, holy shit, this stuff was real.
Yeah.
So how much of it did you have to, in your drafts, how graphic were you earlier, and did you sort of keep snipping away at it, or did you sort of just go full into it?
Okay, so this was a multi-tier process for me.
Okay.
It happens in steps, and when I did this one, I have complex PTSD
Right.
because of the way that I was raised. I have a very I live with a very, it's functional, but it's a very high degree of complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And what that means is that I relive a lot of the pain, I relive a lot of the fear, I relive a lot of the very negative feelings that are associated with these moments. And so, but I'm lucky in that I have embraced this idea of the laws of robotics in my actual life. So I turn my emotions off. I just turn them off, and then I write. And when I write, it's completely descriptive. It's just description of actual event. Here's a memory, recollection. Here's another one. Here's another one. Um, and there's these events that even with the emotions off, I can't do it. And it's still a very difficult thing for me to write. But that whole first draft was just, if you read it, it's just on the nose, boring, just descriptions of memory, like you might report it to a lawyer,
Okay.
for a court case. And then I had to, make sure that that fit into a certain structure so that it was working. And then I started adding the poetry after that in a layer, to try to. And when I say poetry, I mean what I guess
Right.
what we're referring to as quality, or the magic of the thing. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, the emotion had to come later. So I turned that switch on later on, and then
Okay.
it's completely 100% from the heart, and that's a completely different process for me.
Can you
So
guys hear me, by the way?
Yes. Yes, we
yes,
can now.
Okay. You know what I would like to do is, Byron, could you give a log line for our listeners so they are at least sort of oriented in what the script is about, or just tell us anything about the script that you want to share so the audience understands what it's about?
sure. So Shade of the Grapefruit Tree is, there's a boy who's being severely abused by his asshole stepdad, and then he encounters his landlady who's really awesome and teaches him about the laws of robotics. Now he loves fantasy, so he clings to that, and he starts thinking of himself as a robot. And then because he starts thinking of himself as actually becoming a robot, he decides to confront his evil stepdad.
It's a little
Yeah,
bit sort of like a lot of abused children grow up to have dissociative personality disorder, right? Where they create
yeah.
other personalities to endure the abuse for them. And so, to me, this sort of felt a little bit, but yet more of almost like a fantastical way to sort of explore that. Um,
In a very real way, it's based on my realization that that is what I did as a child. I created this kind of outer shell, and it was like a force field, like what you see come up Asimov's force fields. You see that come up in the screenplay. The kid had a force field. I remember like getting punched in the face and getting water tortured and all this stuff that was happening to me, and I didn't feel it. I don't remember the physical pain. I don't remember the fear. I don't remember the even like, and I don't remember joy either from being a kid. I don't remember love, anything like that. I didn't feel, and that's a thing. But of course, you can't stay like that. If you grow up like that, you're going to be a psychotic. So you actually have to address that stuff. And but definitely, what it is 20 years of experience from when I was 10 to when I was 30, and had actually all of this figured out, that this had happened to me. But I make the kid, I put the kid through that hero's journey so that he understands it at the time, that he understands actually how to cope, and he knows what's happening. I didn't know what was happening, but you, there's this really, really significant part near the end of the film where I come out and I confront him while he's torturing me, and he gets very afraid. And in my real life, that happened. There was that moment actually occurred where he became afraid of me and was backing away, and I was walking toward him, and it didn't last. But
it's
cowardice.
interesting. It's interesting how when you just referred to the character, you referred to him as me, which I think
Yeah,
was interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
I don't hear that
I mean,
often. You know?
he definitely is something different than me. You know, he's going through something that I didn't go through acutely, but he's going through something that I went through over a number of decades. You know.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. You took the Aaron Sorkin approach to, to telling a true story.
The only Sorkin script I've ever read is The Social Network. I actually just read that recently. Yeah.
Well, that's a pretty good one to start with, I think.
Exactly.
So yeah, the thing that it's like I say it's grim, but maybe that's not completely fair either. I did say that it is obviously very life affirming and
It's hopeful.
It's hopeful. Good word.
Yes.
Yeah. The scene that I really liked the best, just because I thought it spoke to something that you said earlier, was, and also because it was wickedly funny, but tragic, and that of course is the Raggedy Ann and Andy scene.
Yes.
Which is just, it's just it's so funny. In some ways, this reminded me of a much darker Welcome to the Dollhouse, a little bit, because you have this kid who is abused. He's obviously much more severely abused than she is, but sort of sometimes it did, kind of have that quality to it. But also I think, you talked about the hero's journey, and like for me, really like the major dramatic question of the story was, will he survive? Because believe it or not, it's like if I didn't know that this was autobiographical, I really would have thought that at the end this kid was going to be dead, and maybe I shouldn't have said anything, but I mean, you are alive, so
right. Exactly.
All right. But still, yes, Ramesh. I mean,
absolutely. That was my thing. Even though there are hints in the script, I'm not going to give it away, but there are hints earlier on because of how you structure your story and how your dialogue works that it is. But at the same
time, still didn't matter to me, Ramesh.
No, it didn't, because I honestly,
only because I'm thinking, there's this whole fantasy element to it.
Exactly.
I don't know, maybe he's misleading me to think
that's exactly what I thought, and I didn't want it to be so, but I kept expecting it. Because honestly, when I read it, I had nothing against your bio, but I had forgotten that I'd read your bio. So that opening sentence in your bio was completely lost to me. I'd forgotten about it completely. So that when I read it, I didn't know how much of this was true. I kind of guessed because of the last name.
What was the last name, right?
Right,
like,
exactly.
I was like, uh-oh.
And then I'm reading this thing and I'm thinking, oh, for the love of God, this poor kid. And then I kept hoping I'm like, yes, but it's so tough. And there are some scenes that are really, really tough to read off the page. So how tough was it for you to sit down and write those scenes, because you had to go back and sort of relive those moments and put them on page? And not only put them on page, it's not a question of where you're writing your autobiography and you're like, this all happened to me. You also need to dramatize the moment too. So you need to make that happen and make sure that comes off the page too. But at the same time, your desire to be true to the event and true to what happened to you and to your character Jamie. So how, if you don't mind me asking, how difficult was that?
Okay, multi-tiered
Yes,
answer.
yes.
The multi-tiered question.
Yes.
First, I do, I love the idea of loyalty to the screen. To me, it's always putting the story first, even if my story doesn't match up. It's not as important to me to tell my real life story as it is to tell a story that's fucking awesome. But it just so happens that in this case, my story matched up with something that was a really good story,
Right.
So I didn't have to change it that much. That said, that means that I had to, as a person with complex PTSD, literally relive all of these feelings, all of these emotions, everything that hurt again. Like being abused when I was a kid, it was like being abused again. And I was doing it to myself, and so I had control over the situation. So I was able to take breaks. I was able to just walk away from the script, do something else for a number of minutes, hours, even days sometimes. I have a real sense of caring for myself. You know, when I'm writing something like this that requires my full emotional attention, I'm not going to let myself get fucked up by it. Not going to do it. It's not worth it to me, you know. But I will get that story written. This story took me 5 months to write, which is the longest it's ever taken me to write a screenplay. I've never taken as long as that, and that is because I had to take real good breaks for my mental health so that I wouldn't get messed up. I'm going to explain one scene in particular. This scene happens fairly early on in the script, around, I don't know, page 10 or something. So you haven't seen a lot of violence from Augustine, the character that is the kid's mom's boyfriend, who's the main antagonist in the story. You haven't seen a lot of violence from him, and he comes home drunk, takes the kids for ice cream, and then, you know, Jamie says, can I call you dad? Right? And the guy says, he doesn't say it. He like looks at the kid, draws off and punches him full off in the face, and the kid collapses in a pool of his own blood. And that's real. That happened to me. So, and he called me a faggot. Also, pardon my use of the F word, but in that instance, I'm just relaying the truth of the moment. And this is what happened to me, you know, when I was a kid. And so I was like, how do I relay the brutality of this? And the only way to do it was to 100% fully access the emotional truth of the moment. It took me 3 days to write that scene. I was crying the whole fucking time. The scene is half a page.
Yeah.
But I needed it to be real. I needed it to be felt. I needed the people who were watching to go, and it wasn't like a systemic thing where I'm going to establish sympathy for this character. It was like, either you have fucking sympathy for this kid or you don't, you know. And but I'm going to write it the way that it happened. I'm going to put that right there, because when I put it there, it shocks you out of the poetry that you've been living, you know, a little bit up to that point. And it took me 3 days, and so I guess that answers that question. Like, there were other moments in that script that were like that too. I have a pain right here, in the middle of my forehead. Every time I think about that, every time I say sincerely that I love you to my little girls, and it hurts physically, and that's what I wanted people to feel, but in a merciful way, you know, that was hopeful. That wasn't just like clubbing people over the head, you know.
That's what I actually that scene was the first, like, when I was like, wow, when that scene happened.
I thought it was the fantasy scene at first. I was like, there's no way that happened. There's no way that happened. And then you're like, oh my God, that happened.
Right.
Yeah.
That assembly too that you mentioned with Raggedy Ann and Andy, they're up there singing a goofy song about when they touch you in a weird place, tell an adult. So when I was a kid, I stood up in the middle of this fucking assembly and I said, hey, that's happening to me at home. They said, sit down, shut up. I was never addressed. I never got talked to about it. Nothing ever happened about it. That's the reality of these.
Yeah,
you know.
That's the scene, which I didn't want to reveal, but you did so good. And I mean, it was, I mean, like, you're laughing through it, and then he stands up, and then he gets told to sit down and be quiet, and you're literally laughing because it's so insane that you're laughing, but yet at the same time you are crying inside.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's, you know, like that's when the script really, you know, really becomes sublime. There are many sort of spots like that where it just, you know, just the lunacy and the violence and the I mean, it's, and we can of course hear it in your voice, and again, as I told you, I was very, very moved by it, as I am sure every single person who's read the script has been most likely moved to tears, which is why you get the Nicholl, and maybe the Nicholl is a very small consolation for what you had to experience as a child. But yet at the same time, there are people who are really feeling for you now, and you know, truly understand that pain. I mean, this is really more than a screenplay in many ways, isn't it? This is, you know, this is a document. This is a therapeutic document. There's a lot of epiphanies in here, you know, I'm sure for you, and I mean, it really resonates in a way that even better written scripts than your script would not resonate with the kind of power, because we can see the power right here, right now.
I mean, the intention was for it to be felt. The intention was for it to be like, if I can make an allegory, like say that you're a ballet dancer, or you're somebody who's on stage performing. And because I've done a lot of on stage performing, and I know how the audience reacts, and I've done a lot of that, feeling people out and how people are listening and stuff. And I just wanted to have that feeling of when you're on stage performing and you give that moment of connection to the audience that they fucking paid for. That's what they wanted. That's why they paid the money. That was what I was going for, in a practical way, right? Like, how can I make other people really feel this? And this is the first drama I've ever written. I should have mentioned that earlier, because I've never written a drama before, and I loved the power of this one so much. I'm writing like 5 more. I'm like, well, I'm going to write a bunch of more dramas, because I love to me, the storytelling and the art of storytelling has always been about finding the most powerful way to connect. And for me, it looks like probably drama is going to be, at least for a while, the most powerful way to connect.
Well, especially because it is the genre that you've won the Nicholl for also. So we've got some questions from our group members, but what has the Nicholl post experience been like? So has there been attention? For those who don't know, typically 5 slots are won. It could be by a writing team, but there's usually 5 winning scripts, BYRON of which is 1. It is a fellowship, so the writers must agree to write a second script within the year of the fellowship. But there's also a cash prize, $30,000?
It's 35.
35, okay,
Yeah.
$35,000. So, and again, you know, it's sort of a badge of honor in the business. It holds more weight than any screenwriting contest anywhere, and that is, that's a fact. So, what has the buzz been like? I mean, when people are reading the script, they must be like, "Oh my God," you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what's the experience been like?
I mean, people are blown away by this script, and you know why. You read it. They're blown away by it, but also nobody's really come and said, we'd like to represent you. The people that I've reached out to nobody's responded to me who I've reached out to personally. I have, one of the things I was really hoping would happen was I would sort of immediately get some good representation, and that's not the case. For me, I think for the other people who won, it is the case. They all got representation, or had representation that they came with already, and
Okay,
and for me, I am relatively new to this, and that part of the Nicholl is new to selling scripts, right? Like you haven't sold a script that's for more than 20 grand or something like that. I think that's one of the qualifying factors. Yeah, and so and I haven't. So for me, I'm like, I am new to the world of trying to sell my scripts. I'm new to the industry of selling a screenplay. I haven't done it, and maybe that's a reason why people are just like, I don't know. But I mean, other people don't seem to be having as much of a problem with it as me. And maybe it's because I say I was raised by a murderer on my fucking bio in the first line, like an idiot.
May I interject and give you
Mm.
perhaps a little bit, of an insider's perhaps perspective? Sort of looking at it, let's say somebody might look at you as a writer, they might think, well, this is autobiographical.
Right.
Right. So what could he do with the script that wasn't autobiographical? So that could be a potential bias.
Mm.
I think that would be a silly bias, but I think it could be a potential bias. So your follow-up script might be very important for this journey. Also, I think in terms of people looking at scripts to produce, this is it's a grim story. It stars a child, which is tough, potentially. And also for what could be a low budget script, it might need a little bit of CGI or, something that could potentially drive the budget up. But regardless of that, I'm surprised that at the very least, a manager somewhere hasn't sort of, really wanted to have a serious conversation with you. And maybe you just haven't reached out to enough yet, I would say.
Part of it is probably to do with some of my low confidence too. It's hard for me to call people. It's just hard for me to call people. I call them and I'm gonna choke on the phone. I'm like, hi, I won the Nicholl, and can you represent me? I mean, I don't know what the fuck to say. I've even tried things like I've written a script that says, it's kind of an extrapolation of how I'm gonna have this conversation on the phone. It's not easy to do when you have this social issues that I do, but I gotta overcome that, and I'm working on it. Like each day I'm trying one new thing. Maybe I'll contact this person. I watch 4 movies by a person. This really great thing too this year that they started last year was they give you a mentor. And I've had Nicholas Meyer as my mentor. So we had a great conversation, and he read the script and he loved it, and he's showing it to his guy, and so maybe through those kind of channels we can get something going. But I know that this is a script that isn't necessarily going to sell. And the whole concept for me was to, number one, to win the Nicholl, right? So I wanted to write a drama that would literally win the Nicholl. That was one of the reasons to write a drama at all. And the second thing, wait, where was I going with that? What the hell? I was saying something. God, maybe this is why they don't want to represent me, because I lose track of my thoughts. The fuck was I saying? You guys don't even know. See, that's the thing.
No, you were talking about finding representation and why you can't talk to people.
Oh, yeah. So I wrote this because I wanted people to know this is a guy that has this voice. I can write this way. I can give you the magic. Just fucking give me a contract and I'll do it. Like I really do have, and without being thirsty about it. You know what I mean? Like without coming across as a desperate person. I got to pay the rent, at some point.
Yeah.
This fellowship money isn't going to last very long,
How does the mentorship thing work? I know you've just started it, but what can you talk to us about that process? And I mean, first of all, it's pretty cool to have Nicholas Meyer as a mentor. Time after Time is such a terrific film.
So I'm talking to Nicholas Meyer and I, who asked me to call him Nick, which was so cool. Just that, and he wrote and directed The Wrath of Khan.
Right.
And I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of that series of Star Trek. And like, anyway, how it works is you connect and it's on their terms, really. You really have to be very respectful of their time and considerate of them and stuff like that. Like anybody who would say, hey, connect me with Nick Meyer, I'd say, go fuck yourself. I'm not doing that. Like it would be very much, I'm going to be a very, very selfishly guard his information and any time that he gives me. But just sitting down with somebody who's a legend like that and just having a conversation and having him say to me, holy shit, you're the real deal, your script is amazing, that to me is like what is helping me overcome a lot of my social problems with connecting in the industry, which is that I don't belong here. I have this feeling like I totally don't belong here. I don't feel like I'm good enough. I don't feel like I'm what is the word? And I don't feel like an imposter. I feel like when I read other people's scripts, quite honestly, mine is better than a lot of the ones that I read. But and that sounds like a kind of a dick thing to say, but it makes sense.
But it's true,
right?
And if you think about it, of course, my script feels better to me because I fucking wrote it. Like, why would I put a piece of shit out there or something that I didn't like? Of course, I like my script a little better than most people's scripts. But regardless of if other people you will agree with that or not, they're going to have trouble selling this baby. And I just want people to understand, though, also that this, the next move is going to be a very different script. I've actually written another drama since then, and I'm working on another one. This is my fellowship year script that I'm working on now. This one is it's very personal to me too, but it's going to be very, very highly fictional. So, just based on some people that I know. Yeah.
How much of it, if you can talk about it, we've talked about how much of your story was true. How much of it, if any, did you fictionalize? And what was the prompt? What caused you to fictionalize it?
Okay, there's like 10% of this script that isn't real, of Shade of the Grapefruit Tree. And like, for example, the kid gets beaten into a coma. I just wanted to go into a sort of a fantasy scenario there. And so that's why I did that, because I wanted a very poetic world and a poetic interaction. And here's a good one. Felicia, my landlady, wasn't Black originally. I made her Black because I felt like that was relevant to a concern that I have now, upholding this story of love between Black and white people. Because I feel like this fucking world, and in particular in America, and I think in Canada it's more white indigenous, but we have this real nasty thing happening where we're falling apart, and it sucks to me. It sucks so hard because the people that I grew up with, like in the Guthries and stuff, the kids that I hung around with, these were the loves of my life, and I bring them over to my house, and my mom would say, get them out of here, and I would go over to their house and it'd be the same thing. And that kind of racism I can't tolerate that. My heart says no to that. And so why did I made Felicia Black? Because I wanted to tell a story of love between a white and a Black person in a time when that's falling apart, So that's why I did that. Also, I saw Viola Davis had an interview where she, and I love Viola Davis. I just want to say that. But I fucking love actors, first of all, right? But Viola Davis had this interview where she said, listen, white writers, write better roles for Black women. And I went, maybe I can do that, And if she reads this, which I have tried to reach out to them, I like called them and sheepishly left a message, to the production, the head of production there at Juvie, at her company, and I was like, would you like to read my script? Email me, but I still have to reach out to them again, but. Because
you know who else you should reach out to? I would also reach out. Maybe she's a little young, but still, I would reach out to Octavia Spencer.
That's who I was about to say.
She is a producer. She's a very powerful producer.
Yes.
Actually. And so.
I 100%. I love Octavia, and I would love for her to look at that also. I just, I'm just speaking of how I was developing that role. I specifically wrote it for Viola's voice, but I definitely would love for somebody as amazing as Octavia to have a look at that also. And I was thinking kind of Ma Rainey, you know, when I was casting for Viola there with the age. But you know, because I was like, well, she's willing to go there, but maybe she's only really willing to go there for August Wilson. You know, it's like, I don't know. You know, I just some white guy, like, who cares what I wrote, kind of thing. But I I wanted that to be healing. I wanted it to be a beautiful element of my story that could be culturally healing as well as healing to myself personally, you know.
Did you outline this at all when you started writing it, or did you just sit down and go, okay, this is how I'm going to do this?
I mean, I made a full set of index cards. I just want to say this. This is how I write, okay? I have, now I use a beat board. I didn't use a beat board when I wrote that. I've started using a beat board now. But I was writing a full set of index cards. And what I'll do is I'll do Act 1, Act 2 in the index cards. And then because I have a vague idea of where I want to go with Act 3, you know, the hero comes back around and they learn something. You know, like I got a vague idea what I want to do with that, and they win or they lose or whatever, but they grow, right? And but I'll write that first 2 acts, and then wherever the characters start taking me that's how I'm going to form my Act 3. And it's usually because, like, my characters are good enough that they can carry the story, and they teach me shit about what needs to happen with the story, so I'll go there. And this was a tricky one because I had, you know, because I was basing it on my real life. So this was more like how much of these scenes or which scenes should I put in the third act? You know, it was more an issue of organization when I was writing this one. So yeah, it was weird. It was a weird one because yeah, and I'm getting confused because now I use a beat board. So now I'm like thinking about how I go back and forth from the beat board to the index cards before I even start writing, you know. And then I have to write something. If it looks stupid in the index cards, like, I have to write it. Like, I'll write 10 pages and I'll just see, like, does that look dumb? And if it looks stupid, then maybe do I need to add something or put this scene somewhere else or just scrap it? I did an interview recently where I talked to someone about, you know, my first creative output was poetry. I wrote 11,000 fucking poems and I threw them all away. You know, I threw them all away, and songs, and, you know.
Well, the voiceover, which is slight, by the way,
Right.
so I don't want to scare people, but that is very poetic.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
You know, that's all poetry. Basically.
Yeah, heavily influenced by Terrence Malick's The Thin Red Line. You see The Thin Red Line?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Terrence
Yes,
Malick.
I can see that now. Yeah.
You know, in tone, that heavy contrast between the peace and the beauty and the war and the carnage, and I really wanted that to be a part of this. And you know, it's funny because I use animals. I've noticed that I use animals a lot. Sorry, I'm distracted. There's a comment that's here.
I know. I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
did that.
Yeah.
Somebody wrote,
Okay.
"You are so incredibly strong, Byron. I feel like you are bringing such good energy to the world. We can't thank you enough for sharing your story so authentically and bravely." That's from one of our members.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't know where I was. I'm just gonna allow that to sink in and make me feel nice.
Listen, I'm the world's worst interviewer. You know, it doesn't. You know, we were in the middle of a very serious conversation earlier, and then my internet went out. By the way, that's what happened. My internet actually died. What was interesting was that you guys carried on. I just assumed that if my internet went out, that it killed the whole.
No, it didn't. Yeah.
Now we know it doesn't, Ramesh. So
I know.
Okay, there we go.
So,
because I've always been worried about that.
Right.
So, but you know something, I want to boomerang back to that at the end. I want to finish that little conversation because I do feel like we should try to put that Nicholl experience into some sort of perspective. But go ahead. Also, I want to hit some of these.
Right. I have some. Yeah.
Go ahead.
One of the questions is, did you find the exercise in spilling your experience to the page helpful in processing what happened to you?
Absolutely. It was extremely healing to write through this and live it again. One of the things that you will talk to therapists about, if that's kind of your thing, as you heal through something like a complex PTSD, which is a lifelong issue, It's not something that just goes away, because it's the kind of trauma disorder that forms in early childhood. So it becomes a part of you and who you are. But how you deal with things and how strongly you feel horrible memories that you feel. The PTSD is about fucking pain. It's about reliving pain. It's not about being John Rambo and running up around in the hills and shooting at asshole cops and Brian Dennehy. You know, it's about reliving pain and how much that incapacitates you and how much you're gonna let that cripple you, right? Or how much it makes you into an unreasonable person. And writing this has been an extremely healing experience for me, in that I was forced to, yes, live those experiences again. You know that expression, the only way out is through? You know, I'm not sure that I 100% buy that, but I think that in some circumstances, and in my circumstance, that was true. I had to go through it again to stop feeling it so hard, you know. And it fucking worked, you know, and I'm talking about it out loud to people, and I'm saying, yeah, I was raised by a murderer. Please don't throw rocks at me. Because, you know, because that's the way that I feel. I feel like I was raised by a murderer. People are going to go, you're a fucking murderer. Fuck you, you fucking murderer. And that's the way that I feel when I say something like that to people. Oh, you were abused as a child. You're a child abuser. You fucking, you know, and
Right.
that is how people treat you. I'm just saying. It is. And that's another reason for writing a story like this. You can grow up, you can be a good person, as long as you have a code and you work at it, you know? Because some people that are abused by their parents, they grow up and they become child abusers. That's a fact, you know. It is a fucking fact. And if you have been abused as a kid, you need to work on that. You need to address that. You can't just pretend it didn't happen.
Well, look at his brother, right? You know, so he has an older brother who abuses him as well, you know, so you can see that cycle there, you know.
Yeah, and I'm going to avoid that topic of conversation because libel. That's why, you know, and that's the only reason. So
That sounds good to me, but you're not going to avoid this question unless you've already addressed it. This is from Shiv. Having not read the screenplay, how heavily did you lean into the fantastical element? Are there visual references to the kid turning into an actual robot? Example, do you employ the same kind of visual elements that something like A Monster Calls or I Kill Giants, or do you lean more toward the metaphorical?
No, I mean, it's physical, and that was just such a fucking great decision to have him actually become, in his mind, okay, in his mind, he's becoming a robot, but we're seeing it. So the way that I've written it is he starts getting robotic parts until he evolves and becomes a more full, complete robotic version. And the reason for that is because having that visual thing is way stronger than having a poetic thing that you just have. If you leave it up to people's imaginations, I don't think they're going to fucking get it. You know, I think they're going to be like, what? I don't understand. But if you give the kid robotic parts, you give him a force field, you give him red fucking glowing eyes that shoot lasers. I don't know if I did that. I don't think he has lasers. But like,
No.
but you know, if you give him some kind of believable adrenaline boost, and then say that could have been because he's actually becoming a robot, then it gives you that whole other dimension of science fiction to the drama and fantasy to the drama that in a very real way puts it up against Bicentennial Man, against Asimov's. Again, Isaac Asimov is huge in this screenplay,
Right.
but Bicentennial Man is kind of the reverse of Shade of the Grapefruit Tree, in that it's a robot that wants to become a person. Jamie's a person that wants to become a robot because fuck people. And he's sick. He's sick of being a person, and he's sick of being around people and the inferiority of these evil fucking assholes in his life. And to show the difference and the distinction between a person who operates on a normal level of just this, I'm going to say, bestial evil, versus somebody who transcends that, is so visible when you make him actually a robot. And that's where that choice came from. I don't know if I answered everything there. But yeah, there you go.
You know what was interesting about him becoming the robot is that as the audience member, you want to believe that he really is going to become a robot.
Yes.
Because you really want him to just thrash this guy.
Yeah.
You know, and so you as the reader, you also get caught up in the fantasy, only then to sort of have your ear slapped back to realize, this is just a fantasy.
Right.
Yeah. You know, so you're always sort of pulled back into the reality of it.
And that's where a lot of the power is the contrast between what he believes and what's really happening, you know. And so I'm showing what he really believes, but you know what's really happening because you're able to detect that, you know.
Right. Yeah. The script makes it perfectly clear, but still there's this sort of this wish fulfillment, you know, from the reader that, you know, clearly we want some kind of fantasy element to truly happen where he actually does become a robot and he can just, you know, like RoboCop and then, you know, right. And then just smite this guy.
Well, I did, you know, I would have loved that when I was a kid, to just kill that motherfucker. And I don't care who hears that. He's got the death sentence anyway. Fuck him.
I was going to ask, what
Right.
was the disposition? So he was eventually convicted of killing a child?
He tortured a baby to death, 97 wounds in Alameda County, and he was sentenced to death in San Quentin. You know, it's a very dark place to go. I had a conversation with that mother, the mother of that child, who wasn't there at the time, who couldn't have been there at the time to protect the child, and it was just such a fierce, heart-wrenching, horrible thing that happened. And it was that what had happened to that child. I was looking for this guy. I don't know why I was looking for him, but I felt like I needed to maybe inform some authorities that this guy exists. He's out there doing this shit to kids. And I came across this story in this affidavit, and I was like, what the fuck? And like, he was given the death penalty when I found him again. Right? He was already tried and sentenced. And I had been writing about it for a while, and that mother actually reached out to me to say, "Why the fuck are you writing about my daughter?" And so we had a conversation that was a very heartfelt, heart-to-heart conversation, and it was extremely sad. And we cried, and we talked about survivor guilt, and we talked about sort of where a person goes from there. And it at the time I was planning a more of a documentary approach to this story, and she was probably going to be a part of it. And so I mean, we were communicating at the time, and I thought fiction was the better way to go for so many reasons. And one of those reasons was to protect those victims, surviving victims of that murder, you know.
Byron, there is a personal question here. I'm going to put it up on the screen. If you want to pass, feel free. I'm so interested in hearing, although this might not be the forum, as it's not necessarily about screenwriting, how Byron is able to parent, given what he's gone through, and how it informs his parenting, etc. I think that could be a whole screenplay in itself, but that's the question.
Yeah. Okay. So that leads into this law of robotics. You know, it leads into the idea of giving yourself a code, of giving yourself a code that isn't unbreakable, a code that is fluid, but allowing yourself the flexibility of life and of living in an emotional, loving way, but at the same time having a functional, practical life that says, don't harm anyone. You know, don't do that, right? And for some people, it's religion. It doesn't fucking work for me. You know, so for me, I'm like, no, I don't, you know, religion doesn't work. So what do I have? You know, I got stories, I got lore, I got Asimov, you know, I got stuff like this that's that really to me says, you can do this, you know. And I got to be honest, I was not going to have kids. If I couldn't get it together before I was 30, I was not going to have kids. And I didn't want to do that until I was 30. you know. So then by the time when I was 30, I said, okay, now I can allow myself to do it, because I felt like I had come far enough in my personal life, worked on myself enough alone, that I could be better around other people, that I could be more loving. And I mean, the relationship that I have with my kids today is a very loving one. It's a very sweet, beautiful relationship where, you know, like now I'm like normal parents, you know, where I fuck up sometimes, but it's just a regular fucking up. Like, it's not like crazy motherfucker fucking up. You know, it's just like normal fucking up. And everything's okay. I've apologized. You know, kids, you know, I'm sorry. I was thinking this stupid thing. I was wrong. You know, and then you have these conversations. We have weekly meetings. We have, you know, everything is set up to avoid any kind of situation where they feel abused. Everything's set up to make sure that they feel heard, 100% heard out, felt, loved. If you don't feel cared for, there's a place where you can come and you can say that openly and you don't get in trouble for it. We're I have an extremely opposed parenting style to the way that I grew up. And part of that is just making sure that these kids never have to go through it. But part of that also is killing the legacy of this piece of shit. And that is one of the best kinds of revenge there is. I don't believe in revenge that is based on violence or anything that's based on violence, really, with the exception of pure defense. But, you know, I do believe that the best revenge, if you feel like you need it, is to become so fucking great that you kill everything about them that they tried to program you with.
Well, I feel like I'm in therapy today. There's some really powerful life lessons, and you know, for me, I just read the script this morning, so you know, this is a 1-2 punch for me. You know, I'm still sort of, you know, my head is still in the story.
Yeah, I was up till 4 a.m, by the way, reading this script. Yeah.
I'm surprised that you could even go to sleep after reading it.
Oh no, I went to bed around 6.
Okay. That's why you were late this morning.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
This makes me so happy. I just want to tell you guys, I really love you guys. I watch you all the time, and you know, I'm always tuning in. I've you know, the stuff with the log lines was extremely helpful for me as a story, you know, and just the conversations that you tend to have, and it means a lot to me that you guys read it and loved it. That's a big deal. Just want to say that. So, yeah.
Oh.
It's a very emotional morning for me. You know? I'm just getting over COVID. Right here. Well, look, you know, we love doing this, and it was very exciting actually for us to be able to read a script, even though I was like, because by the way, I'll confess, I wasn't even going to read it. Like I didn't even think about it. And then Ramesh throws it at me and he says, "Hey, by the way, if you want to read it," I literally have a million fucking scripts that I have to read.
Yeah.
So many scripts right now. So many scripts. But I was like, you know something? This dude has been so supportive of us over the years. I know you have, Byron. And I was like, I'm going to read this script. And, you know, and I've read a lot of Nicholl scripts. And I'm like, yeah, you know, okay. You know, like I can understand why it won, or like maybe I'm like, oh. But seriously, honestly, it was a pleasure, and I use that word loosely, to read the script, because it you know, it's nice. It's nice for me to see people who are part of the group that are finding success. And Nicholl or not, if I had read the script, I would have cried at the end of it. You know, Nicholl's got nothing to do with that, right? So, you know, good for you. You know, this isn't about us. This is about you. And good for you. And you really did, you know, you really did move us. This is a script that I will remember this script. And for somebody who's read over 60,000 screenplays, that I don't say that often. And most people who know me know that I don't give a lot of praise. I'm not, you know, ask my son how much, you know, how good I am with praise. You gotta pry it out of me. But honestly, so I'm glad that you're happy. We're happy too. Everybody's happy that you're here today, and
Right.
we're all glad that we're sharing in this celebration. The town will eventually catch up with you. Let me just go back to that before we go back to some more questions. Listen, you don't worry about any sort of insecurities that you have. You have the badge of the Nicholl. Literally, that in this town, especially now for you, that's like Superman's cape. I'm telling you, it's Superman's cape. You literally put that in the subject line of anything that you send out, Nicholl winner. And then make sure that you say in the first sentence, hey, I'm not a motherfucking quarterfinalist. What? Quarterfinalist? What? I'm not a semifinalist. What semifinalist? What? No way. I am one of the 5 winners out of 8,190 plus scripts.
Yeah.
Handed out to me by a very prestigious group of judges. Actually, I don't know who they were this year, but they're usually pretty prestigious. Like in the past, it was people like Eva Marie Saint and like all these kind of. So people know, and then if you also target. You can go for production companies, go for people like Viola, and don't be shy, push that Nicholl thing. And but also don't be afraid to go for managers as well. And people will at the very least read the script. And then, if you can get a conversation with them, and then also start talking about what's next for you as well. Mm-hmm. I think is important. Some people want to know, what is your new script about? Can you tip your hand at all with it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I had this legendary fucking theater director when I was in university studying acting. His name was Arif Hasnain. Arif has passed away. And I got to talk to his family if I can use his name or anything like that. But I'm going to base a character on him because I loved him so much. We loved this guy. And he was just so charismatic, but also just so fucking weird. And the relationship, the loving relationship that we had, and how he brought me back to who I was as a person. Okay, so when I was a kid, I became a robot, right? This is the guy that put the soul back in, and that to me, it's like, in a way, it's just like the spiritual sequel to this. But then I have all this other stuff, like it's got some Hamlet in there, and it's got some other stuff happening. But I wanted to write a movie about Arif and how much I loved Arif, and just how much our relationship meant to me as a mentee, as a person that was growing into being a functional human being under the influence of this guy who has the creative freedom of John Cassavetes, but the fucking brutality of like Strasberg, like Lee Strasberg, right? He was fucking brutal with us. And that was so good for me. It was so good that he was brutal, and it was so good that he was loving. It was like, bullshit, darling. Come here. I want to tell you what I hate about your performance, but then I love you. And then you would have you would go on and on like this. Sorry, go ahead.
No. So this is the script that you're going to write for the fellowship?
Yeah, it's my fellowship year script. That's what I'm working on right now. Like I was working on it.
Pitch that to them? Like, does the Academy want to know what it is that you're going to work on? Do they ask for things in advance? Log lines, outlines, anything like that?
Yeah, you have deliverables. They want you to get them, a logline summary, and here's maybe the first few pages or scenes. I mean, I think a lot of people write a lot slower than me. Like, to me, when I think about this, I can put all the love in and get the rough draft in probably about 5 weeks, right? And the idea that, but I'll need time to iron that out, obviously. And this is after the planning. So for me, the planning of this one was so important because it's such a fucking weird play, a screenplay. And so I really wanted it to be magical and interesting on its own. So I'm in the beat board index, kind of going back and forth between the beat board and index cards right now. But I've written a few scenes out just because I want to just see if they've worked. And yeah, I mean, they ask for certain deliverables, and if they hire you to write a screenplay, basically, and that's what the $35,000 is. They hire you to write it. Right. So that my first contract for a screenplay ever is with the Academy of Motion Picture Arts. So I'm like, yeah, pretty good. I'm in the Margaret Herrick Library. I mean, I got a little script that's hardbound script of my work with the little Oscar on it. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Well, so again, you sound pretty excited about it here. That's what you need to convey when you're reaching out. When you're reaching out to managers and stuff, because they'll be equally as excited. And yeah, again, it is tough material, but it also shows what it is that you can do. And ultimately, that's really what you're trying to sell. That's really what most new writers should really be trying to sell. I mean, it's great.
The voice, right? Like, this is who I am. This is what I can do for you, not fucking buy this thing and make it. I mean, I want that script made. I absolutely want it made, but I don't have a delusion that says, oh, from this Nicholl win, I'll get the script made. I think I might have to make it myself in a few years, but, which I can do because I can produce,
That's what Galit did, right? Ramesh,
Gita.
She produced it. Gita, excuse me.
Yes.
She produced it herself. Yes.
No. She did. No, she did go out but she went out and she sought out producers and she went out and got.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. But she.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. She struck it up.
There is speaking of the stuff you've written. You'd mentioned this was your first drama. And Stephanie wanted to know what other genres were the scripts you've written, or what were the other scripts you wrote? What genres were they in?
I wrote one. Okay, so I do a lot of genre bending. So I wrote a movie that I wanted to see if I could write a horror comedy, and I fucking know about horror comedy and how unsellable it is, and that a lot of people don't think that it can sell. But I wanted to see if I could write, a rom-com and mix it with a straight up 80s slasher film. So I did that. I just wanted to see if I could do it. I wrote a family animation that I fucking love. I keep talking about this. There's something missing in it, and I don't know what it is, but I love this script. It's so good. It's called Death Four Eyes, and I can say that because I copywrote the title. But so it's about this Grim Reaper who wears glasses because he's almost blind, and he's really clumsy, and he bad at his job, right? And so, but it's a family animation kind of mix between Dumb Ways to Die and I don't know, Monsters Inc., right? The Pixar film. And so that, yeah, and all those production houses that do animation, they get their own people to write their stuff. So the idea of actually selling that, again, I don't know, right? I have no idea how I would actually sell an animation. Because I could go to Illumination, or I could go to Pixar, or I could whatever, and they'll be like, sorry, no, we're already working on a project. These guys have 10 projects that they want to do, and you're not a consideration. But I would love to work with Pixar. I would love it. Pixar, but also I did this weird thing that I fucking love about this monster who's a criminal defense lawyer in Philadelphia, and he's an actual monster with horns, and he's hundreds of years old, and he's been around since fucking the dawn of oh my God, what is it? Abolitionism. He's been around since abolition, and he was part of that. He was part of freeing slaves, and and I just thought it was interesting to have a monster who's been around since the dawn of America. And he just decided that he'd had a fucking enough, and he was going to give in, and he was going to be an asshole, even though he used to fight for it. And now, and then he has the transformation. So yeah, I mean, I've written a lot of stuff like that. I wrote a script about when I was the only white kid in my hood in the Guthries, another autobiographical script. It's working and it's not working. I mean, people are coming back to me saying, no, Byron, this is too much. I'm using the language of my friends, and that and I'm white, and so it's a bit much, coming from me. It really is that I'm writing it that makes it so much, but it's still, it would be a good script if it wasn't written by a 40 something average mediocre white guy.
Somebody's saying, I'm deeply moved by your journey and sincerity. Congratulations on your success now and what is surely to come. When you get representation, what does your career look like in your mind's eye? Creatively, where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years?
5 years. I mean, I want to be, as soon as possible, a full-time working writer for features. Absolutely. And can I do that from, I need to be able to do that from here. But I mean, I can travel, but I need to be able to do most of it from here because my kids, I share custody with my kids. So it's a 50-50 split. And so I have to be here in Winnipeg where I am for at least, we're looking at 8 years. So that's what I have to do. But and I don't know if I'm going to have the energy to direct after 8 years, but I want to direct. I mean, I've directed before in my documentaries, and I really just fucking love actors so much. And I would love to see myself writing and directing projects. But that's, again, you're looking at 8 to 10 years before I'm going to consider that. Like, actually come to LA and do the thing,
Well, I think it's important to point out that, again, you won the Nicholl and you did it from Canada. So once again, the idea that a writer, especially a screenwriter, I should say a feature screenwriter, needs to be in Los Angeles is a myth. And especially because you don't need to be in LA to write. And nowadays you can take meetings in Zoom, something that we didn't do 5 years ago. Now it's commonplace. So being remote, it's not an excuse anymore for anybody, and the only obstacle to any writer, in my opinion, making it is their script. And, you broke down that international barrier. So, I mean, it's Canada, it's not like it's Timbuktu or something, but still, so that should inspire our writers who are not in town, which is probably the majority of them, who are elsewhere. So, when you get paid, and you need to be in town, then that you'll have to figure out, that you'll have to juggle. But that's what we call a champagne problem,
Yeah, it's a good problem to have, and I look forward to that problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're going to go back for a second because Shiv, it just wants you to clarify. Do you spend 5 weeks planning and then writing the first draft, or do you spend 5 weeks writing the first draft and X number of weeks planning beforehand?
Shiv, it can take months of planning if you got a project that's complex enough, because I think, but honestly, like, my heart is chomping at the bit. My heart's going, why aren't you fucking writing? Why are you talking about this? Stop trying to hit me, you motherfucker. I mean, I have a heart that says, no, write the story, do it. And I'm here planning, and it goes, what the fuck are you doing? Stop it. Stop planning. And like go write that. And because I have a feeling I have to go do it. So I tend to get a little bit confused about how much time I spend on one and how much time I spend on the other, because they are integrated. But let me say, I mean, I'll give you an example. So I wrote a TV pilot for someone. It took me maybe 4 weeks to sort of plan, right? And then it took me 5 days to write it. That's an hour-long script for a drama. I can't get into what it was. It was somebody else's idea. But so I wrote that out, and I liked it. I thought there's a pretty good script. It could, use a bit of a dialogue overhaul here and there. But for the most part, in 5 days, I had a good pilot script. And each time I go back to these characters, now that I've developed them, script fucking writes itself. So every episode's going to be 5 days, the way that I see it, you know. And I, you know, TV is different, right? And because I think people mostly work in teams when they do TV, and you want to break it all before you start writing. That's what I've heard, and for me, that was definitely a factor. I wanted to break it all because I wanted episode after episode after episode, you know, because I wrote out plot summaries for like 10 more episodes after that. That was part of the planning. So that took, yeah, I mean, like 5 weeks, I guess, altogether, just to do that, just to get that pilot ready. I wouldn't call that a waste of my life because it was a good exercise, but they never got back to me, you know. But for a feature, you know, honestly, like the quickest I ever wrote a feature was 2 weeks. And that was just the writing of it, not the planning of it, right? The planning of it is with me for months, probably at a time before I do it. But if someone comes to me with an idea and says, here's a fully fleshed out idea, would you write that? I can have it pretty fucking fast. Yeah. You know, I mean, all I'll have to do is sort of tweak this and that kind of character and put in their ideas where they want their ideas. Maybe go to them and say, your idea sucks. Your idea doesn't work here. And you know, everybody has their own ideas of what works and what doesn't work. I just want to throw this in, though. If somebody gives you their creative idea and you don't have any ideas of your own, you're just a fucking typewriter. You know, they should be hiring you for you. They should be hiring you for who you are and what you bring to the table. And if that's the case, don't be shy about changing their ideas, you know, in my opinion. What do you guys think of that point?
I think it's good advice. I think that's what people want. They want to bring in a writer who is going to take the burden off of them, you know, so the development executives or the producers, that these are things that they don't have to worry about. They're of course going to have their opinions and et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, you know, they're hiring you for a reason. So, you know, this is why I say all the time that especially to new writers who rely so much on getting feedback, especially from paid consultants and whatnot, is that, you know, the time's going to come when you're the paid consultant, so to speak. And so, you know, now's the time to brush up on those skills. You need to sort of have your own instincts and your own voice. So, yeah, and now's the time to do it. Definitely. Ramesh, it looks like you're in a fog. What's
it's the
sun. It's sun.
It's the sun, yeah. Okay. And I'm gonna use the sun because yeah.
Right? I was like, what's going on?
I know. I suddenly realized it's like yeah. Shiv actually has another question. He says, "I'm sure this."
Hey, Shiv.
Right.
Shiv, this isn't your show, buddy. What's going on?
Fuck up, Shiv. This is my show, Shiv.
Come on, Shiv. What's going on here, you know?
He says, I'm sure the script only captures a fraction of what you endured. How did you choose which moments to focus on? And did you have to transplant some events in order to make them line up in the narrative?
Yeah, good question. And absolutely. Because if I went linear with it, and I think this is a big problem. You spoke about the sort of, you alluded to the ass-hattery of people writing autobiographical movies. Right. You know, it's like, oh my God, not another fucking autobiographical movie. But like, I think a big problem is that a lot of people go about it and they make it fucking linear. They're like, this has to be as it happened in my real life with actual lines of dialogue from my real life. And I just don't believe in that at all, not even close. I think that if you have a moment from your real life that jives well with something that is going to be extremely powerful to a reader, to an audience, then go for that. And if you don't, then, you know, don't use it, cut it, right? If you have a moment that's going to be, and when I say extremely powerful, I don't mean that it has to be big. You can have ruler, flat, beautiful slices of life that are amazing. Look at, again, I mentioned John Cassavetes earlier, Woman Under the Influence. Look at that movie. Right. You know, you want to see a movie that's a slice of life that's just absolutely gorgeous and just full of power. That movie always stands out for me. But yeah, if you and he did that, he took stuff and he said, okay, I'm going to take that beautiful moment that happened and I'm going to line them up so that they make sense as a story of character growth.
Yeah, it's I watched Being the Ricardos, which is written and directed by Aaron
Aaron
Sorkin.
Sorkin,
And
yeah.
yeah, and I brought him up earlier because this is a guy who, his only master is drama. That's it. And so when it comes to history, he doesn't care. And so he took all of these events that happened over the course of 6 or 7 years of the shooting of the TV show I Love Lucy and put them all into 1 week.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Right. So it's like
Love it.
Lucy was pregnant the same week that this happened, the same week that that happened, the same week that this happened. When in reality, those things all was stretched out over a much greater period of time. And then even at the climax, there's an appearance by J. Edgar Hoover, which, really sort of builds to this big moment, which never happened. And what actually happened at that moment is pretty well documented for those who know about it. But yet he didn't care, So
he took liberties. That's cool. That's cool. I didn't know that because I watched it and I thought that I know the moment that you're alluding to, and I thought that had actually happened. I didn't realize that.
No,
oh wow!
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So a lot of that was just built up and fictionalized. Desi Arnaz.
Can I say this?
Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like earlier I was like, yeah, I've only read one script by Aaron Sorkin. Listen, I don't fucking read anybody's scripts, right? I read that script by Aaron Sorkin because, it took best fucking everything at the Oscars. So I went, okay, I want to find out what this is about. And when I was reading it, it's not my favorite story. It's not, but at the same time, just I was looking at the writing and I was going, this guy writes like me. He fucking writes like me. I was seeing what he was doing and I was seeing what his process was and I was seeing the heart of it. And I was going, I like this guy. I could talk to this guy. And I hope that happens at some point, that, and not for leverage or climbing a ladder or anything. I just want to shoot shit with Aaron Sorkin. Is he fucking watching? I mean, it'd be nice. It'd be nice to have a conversation.
He's an Aristotelian, so it's like, he sort of really subscribes to Aristotle and sort of, all of that stuff. And
I'm a fucking Plato guy.
And Ramesh is a Sophocles guy. So
yes.
Okay, there we go.
There you go. Let me just say that Phil is asking, was that acceptable to you, Chris? Because he knows that I'm a little bit of an I Love Lucy fanatic.
Yes.
And being a dramatist and a dramaturg, absolutely acceptable, 100% acceptable. Even though there were a lot of things in the movie that I was like, bullshit, but I didn't care because it's not a documentary, right? If it's a documentary, then I expect everything to be presented in a very real, true way. But this was not that. And I was in the hands of a master. I'm not saying that I loved the movie. I certainly didn't hate it. I thought it was very solid. But again, it's the screenwriter, he has to answer the master, and the master is drama. That's the master,
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
That's what you understood, I think. Yeah, that's
you kill anything that doesn't work and add anything that does. That's I wanted this story to be autobiography, but I really, more than that, I really needed it to activate people's hearts. And honestly, I don't think that if I told the story in pure, like in a nonfiction way, that it would be any good. I think it would be for one, I think it would be a real downer. I think it would be just sad, and it would just kind of stop there. And putting the things together in the rhythm that I do. And I come from editing too. Like I've done a lot of editing, so I know the rhythm, right? And so when I write for rhythm. And that's a big thing for me, is seeing the pattern of you're up here and it's really, you're feeling good, and then it goes, fuck you, pulls you down. And then you're down here and you go, you gotta fight, and you gotta get up there, and you gotta, oh my God, it feels good. You gotta, fuck you, come down. And it's the rhythm of that is the symphony of moving hearts to me. It's like, and I use this, I do use this analogy a lot, but it's like when a bass player is in a band, you don't really notice the bass player. That's the writer in the background. They're going boom, 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 boom. And every time they go, that little string shakes. And you don't realize it, but chemically, this is what's happening in your body. Your chest cavity is literally fucking physically shaking, right? And that to me is what I'm trying to do as a writer. I'm trying to be that basis. You don't notice me, but that bass line is moving you. It's moving you. It's moving you as you go through that. As you go through that script. Anyway, I think I hope I don't sound, I don't know, like arrogant or what. I don't know fucking everything about writing. I just want to make that.
You're not sounding arrogant at all. And you know, it's like I've met writers. In fact, we've had writers on here who say that they don't read any scripts. They will not read their friends' scripts. They hate reading scripts. They despise it. I can't think who it was, Ramesh, but you know.
Oh, I know a few. I know a few.
And like I get it, you know. So, but again, at least you read a good Aaron Sorkin script.
I have a reading disability, right? And so for me, it could take me fucking 5 days to read someone's script. So I got this app, and I'm not going to advertise it, but I got this app, and I love it. It's so good. And now I can read someone's or just listening to it in about.
Hang on a second. What is this app? Because then I can use it.
Voice Stream. It's fucking great. Voice Stream, and you can teach it how to clearly pronounce the slugs, you know, and stuff like that. So it's really good, because it'll say, you know, interior instead of INT period, you know, like a lot of the readers. So you can teach it. It costs a little bit, but it's worth it, you know. And so I use this because I have a reading disability, and so for me, I get that script out of the way in 3 hours. If it's very important to me, I'll read along. But usually I'm just listening. I got to do the shopping. I have to do all the cleaning. I do everything in this fucking house. It's a single parent house. You know, I mean, I have a girlfriend, but she lives in Oklahoma. And this has been the most difficult 2 fucking years, this COVID thing. But
you want to give a shout out to her, by the way? Because she's probably watching.
You watching?
I think she's probably watching.
Yeah, I think she
I
is.
love everything about you. Are you watching?
Because she's been chiming in a little bit.
Yeah, she has.
So we don't want to reveal. I don't want to reveal any of the, you know, any of the love connections here. But at any rate, so do we? Somebody's asking, can Voice Stream provide inflection?
You know, it has one of the most natural reads of a lot of the readers that I've tried. The free ones are terrible. They're so bad. And I have yet to find a good. Look at that. I love everything about you.
Sorry. You are too easily distracted. Okay. Wait a minute. Your GF says you're a tender lover.
I'm a tender lover.
I'm sorry.
I'm not a tender lover. Hey, no. Let's get back to this. I'm a sport fucker. Hey, no, I want to clarify this point.
Yeah.
All right. I'm just kidding. I was going for the joke there.
That's all right. That's right. You were talking about voice inflection. You said it was the most natural.
Voice Stream is the most natural. I think they're not going to like this as an ad. You know, talking about sport fucking in the middle of it. They're probably going to come back and say, "We're not going to pay you to say that." You know.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll care. I don't think they'll care. Ramesh, do we have any
questions? Yeah, we have a couple here. One is, as a child, what type of fantasy inspired you?
You know, Choose Your Own Adventures. The books, Choose Your Own Adventure. God, man, I love those things. When I was a kid.
Which is part of something that goes on here in the script. Yeah,
it's a theme. Choose Your Own Adventure is a theme in this story. Because those books were so influential to me. I mean, my very first introduction to choice, I think, in the world was through Choose Your Own Adventure and through video games. You know, I had no sense of choice, of you would actually have a choice to go and do something. I mean, look, I don't know about you guys, but when I was like 10 years old, I just fucking run around on the streets by myself until 10 at night. And that was, I think, more a product of the age than the neglect. But the neglect was definitely a factor there, you know, because I was also really deeply hurt while I was walking around by myself at 10 years old. And some of that comes through in the play, in the screenplay Shade, but See, again, I will lose my train of thought. It was because I jump all over the place.
So do I told you I'm the world's worst interviewer.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks, but this is what you get for free.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
it's like what was your favorite fantasy? Your fantasy.
Yeah, it was the choose your own adventure books, and when it comes to film, you know, funny enough, Wrath of Khan was a big deal to me when I was a kid, and it's just so interesting to me to grow up, and now I'm having a conversation with the Wrath of Khan guy. You know, like a real conversation. We're talking about story. I love his story. He loves mine. But that's so fucking weird to have been moved by that when I was a kid, and then actually meet the person you're
I
doing.
must have missed this part. That must have been when my thing went dead.
Yeah,
So,
Nicholas Meyer is his Ampus is his mentor.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Time
so
after time, baby. Time after time.
Exactly.
Yeah, time after time. The 7% Solution is one that I've just finished reading there now too. The Sherlock Holmes stuff, right? Which is he's popularized Sherlock Holmes in America. I mean, god damn.
You know something? I'm sorry. Listen, you know something? I did a really bad job with this whole Nicholl thing. I did a terrible job. I apologize to everybody. I did a terrible job. Can you just walk us through? I mean, like, I'm asking this now. I'm sorry, everybody. Can you just walk us through? Because I didn't even know that you got a mentor. So can you just walk us through exactly what it means? You won. What happens? Tell us. Go ahead. I'm just going to sit back and just tell us. Sorry, folks, that I took all this long to get to it.
I'm going to say this first of all. They make sure that you are not aware. They don't want anyone to know that they actually won. They're very careful about that. And that's I think for a person who had like anxiety or anything like that, that could be a really difficult thing. But also, you know, because you're like, I think I'm going to have to go and celebrate someone else winning, and then they're like, we're going to reveal the winners in a month. This is after they tell you that you're in the semifinal, right? So that you're in the finals, and so it took a while, and there were 10 finalists. But then when they finally revealed it to me, I didn't know. It was very hard for me, and I had my emotions set to off. And so they're like, "You're the winner," and I was like, "Awesome."
How did they tell you? Just through an email?
On Zoom, because we had to do the whole thing on Zoom, you know.
What do you mean the whole thing? What whole thing?
As they were telling the winners that they had won, we had to do that over Zoom. But then a month later, they announce it, and then we were talking to the other fellows, that's the best fucking thing. Talking to the other fellows, that's my favorite part of all of this, because they're so interesting and they're such fucking cool people. Like you know, one of the Nicholl guys just did Shang-Chi, right? And gosh, and I can't think of the other stuff right now.
You mean a past Nicholl winner? A past
Nicholl Nicholl winner. Yeah, and then but also the other 4 people in my year are awesome. I mean, they're just so cool just to know. For me, to be able to speak with, they're so supportive and they're uplifting and they're kind. And where do you find that? You know, it's hard to find that in people in general. But I don't know. I kind of lucked out winning the year with those other 4 fellows.
Are you creating some kind of bond with them, by the way? You know, like, do you guys meet regularly? Do you have a private Facebook group? You know, like that kind of thing?
We kind of meet. We kind of meet once a month, and we swap strategies and stuff. Like this or that person emailed me. Have you heard from them? And you know, what do you think? What do you think of this group that kind of looks a little bit shady? And you know, I mean, we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about our different views of that, and help each other clarify who might be serious and who might be trying to just kind of take us for a ride. You know. And I think that's really important for me, because they understand the industry. They all understand the industry more than I do. I feel like a fucking idiot when it comes to the industry. Like I don't really get it. I get story. I don't really understand industry. You know, for me, I'm like, can I just please be a writer and have someone sell my scripts for lots of money? And like, I wish that was the setup. instead of really having to worry about this industry stuff. But there's a learning curve. I have to learn. I have things to learn.
And it keeps changing all the time anyway. I've been in the industry for
Yeah.
over 30 years. I don't understand anything. I don't.
That helps me. It helps me to hear that, because it makes me feel like maybe I'm not such an idiot. Maybe it actually just changes all the time and it's fluid, you know?
It does. It's very fluid. So, so then how do you get introduced to a mentor? Do you have to pick your mentor? How does that work?
Okay, so the mentors are volunteers, and the academy will say to them, would you like to work with this person? And the person will look at them and go and say yes or no, but they won't tell you anything about that process. That's private, because
Sure.
they don't want to say who said no, I don't want to work with that person, or whatever, you know, which is absolutely, I can completely understand. I wouldn't want to know who said no to working with me. I wouldn't want to know that, you know.
No, of
Um,
course.
and you know, everybody's, I feel like I don't want to say who everybody's mentors are, because like I feel like that's private, that's for them to break, that's between
Sure, and I
them
get it.
and their mentors.
Yep.
Right.
It's kind of like
Uh,
your AA sponsor, you know. So you
yeah,
just
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of like anonymous. I don't even know if I feel that great about revealing who my mentor is, you know, like publicly, but
We won't tell anybody. Let's all make a pact. We're not going to tell anybody.
but I don't know, man. I love him, you know. I think he's amazing, and I have a deep respect, and even not knowing who he was when I was a kid, I had deep respect for him then, even not knowing him, you know. And that's such a cool concept to me, that now I have somebody who can at least break it down for, and he comes from theater like I do, you know. He has an appreciation for Shakespeare like I do, because I'm putting a bit of Shakespeare in this new fellowship year script, you know, with the Arifez name one. I'm going to do that. It's a kind of a take on Hamlet, which is maybe an arrogant thing. You know, my fellowship year script will include Hamlet. You know, I mean, it's kind of like it feels a little bit like being an asshole, but I'm going to do it in what I hope is a very tasteful way that isn't something that's going to take away from me as a storyteller, you know, because Shakespeare's tricky, and it can be really, really annoying in the language, and it can be really kind of more of a pain in the ass than it's worth. But you look at a film, Academy Award film like Shakespeare in Love, you know, I thought they did that very well. The illusions that they brought in, and the kind of the scripts from the different Shakespeare stories that they put in there. And you could say, yeah, I'm like a really learned person when it comes to theater, but guess what? I fucking forgot it all, because I graduated in 2000. This is what, 2022? I don't remember that shit. I got to read these things again. You know, King Lear. What happens in King Lear? You know, I saw it at the No Theater. I saw it in. I went to fucking Stratford upon Avon, and I watched the Royal Shakespeare Company put on Macbeth and King Lear, and I had to read them again to see what the hell happens in them. You know, it's hard for me to remember stuff. I take in thousands of stories, you know, movies,
Yeah.
TV, books, video games, endless fucking input for me. Yeah. Anyway, what are we talking about? The Nicholl, yeah, what happens
Yeah.
in,
We just let you ramble, Byron. That's all. You just listen. This is your time. You've earned it. You go. You go. But yeah, okay. No. So you know, you addressed the Nicholas Meyer thing, and we're gonna be quiet about that. And so then, like in the past few years, they were having ceremonies and stuff like that, and you know, like live ceremonies, and then obviously they couldn't do that. And so did they do some kind of presentation? I know they did last year because my friend wrote it. And so did they do some kind of live presentation this year, you know, with like
they did
clips
not. That's on hold due to COVID, and that's, yeah, they're holding. And basically, they're looking at doing, at some point, there's going to be a table read with a casting that they do and everything like that. And you send them your excerpt, you know, that you'd like, your excerpt A and B, you know, A being the priority. And you send them an excerpt and see if hopefully somebody of note will be interested in reading for these roles. And yeah,
right.
so.
That's interesting. Okay, so you missed out a little bit on sort of the pomp and circumstance this year.
Yeah, but I don't feel ripped off. I gotta say,
Okay.
I mean, I would have loved to go to LA. I mean, like the Academy Museum was opening, like all kinds of shit was happening, and I would have loved to just have a reason to just go down there with Hasty. I mean, I would have loved to just say, hey, let's go to LA and go, you know. But you know, it didn't happen, and I think part of part of me is disappointed, but part of me totally understands that. And I thrived on limitation my whole life. You give me a piece of shit, I'll turn it into gold. You know, so if you don't let me into LA, I'll find a way. You know, I'll find a way to make that into a little bar of gold that I can sell. Like, you know, it's a trick of mine. You know, limitation, creativity, pure fucking gold when I see limitation.
Wow. So keep that in mind when you're querying, all right? You keep that
Yeah.
in mind because remember, there are no limitations when you're querying. There, you know, there's really not. You know, you've got the golden ticket right now. So use it. Use it.
Yeah.
Don't be shy. All right. I think we're going to start to wrap this up unless there's any
There are a
other
couple of other questions.
Of course there
Actually,
are. By the way, we can when it comes to Ramesh, we can never end. Right? Oh, as well, it's time to go. Right, Ramesh? Yes, but first we have 80 million more questions.
but first,
Okay.
well, I have two questions. I'll ask this one first. Tanya asked, "What if you're writing a biopic? Do you feel the writer has the same freedom to adjust events?"
The same freedom as what?
As like when you did because you moved stuff around and you you know read, but if you were writing a
Oh, I
biopic,
see. If I was writing a biopic for someone else,
right?
you know, I take people very seriously, and I really do love people. And for me, if I was going to do a biopic in particular, if it was somebody who had passed away, I'd want to be speaking with everyone who knew them. I'd want to be speaking with, you know, their estate and the kind of people that that knew everything there was to know about them. And as a journalist, you know, because I've been trained in journalism, so I could go through and I could contact these people, just really go through it and really have in-depth conversations, maybe call them back every now and then. And I would want to get it as true as possible. Then, once I had all those facts, I would make this into the best fucking movie possible, right? And if that meant that I was going to have to fictionalize things a little bit, that's just a note that you're going to have to put at the end of the movie. You know, things have been fictionalized a little bit for this biopic. Yeah, and you know, in the interest of having a really good film about someone who was respected and loved by a great many people, I think that person would hopefully would appreciate my artistic input into making their life seen as beautiful. I would hope. I would hope. But my loyalty, again, would be to the screen. It would not be to the living estate of the person that I was writing for. And if that loses me a contract, so be it. I'm going to be loyal to the screen.
Well, again, just always drop Aaron Sorkin's name. You know, I don't think that there'll be much of a problem there. So,
How much you were an actor, you went through acting, you did all that. How much did being an actor, or what impact did it have and influence you as a writer, if any?
In terms of, I really try to go for actor freedom when I'm writing. Like, I think about a moment and it's not like a blueprint. I really do try to find the best line of subtext and dialogue that I can. But I think about if I were the actor, you know, if I were that character, how would I be reacting to this line that this person just said, you know, and that as the characters kind of speak to each other, the realism of that just comes out because I'm able to put myself in the character's shoes, fictional or not. You know, I go, well, that character would do this, you know, and then this character would react this way to their reaction. And, you know, when I say realism, I mean, I'm doing romanticism and naturalism in what I'm writing, but my style of learning when I learned acting was realism. I'm not a big fan of the slice of life realism thing usually, so I don't like to write like that. But when my characters talk to one another at first, I make their interactions as real as possible, and that is from knowing kind of how to flow in a scene study or in a rehearsal of a scene. right? So there is somewhat of my acting kind of ad lib stuff happening while I'm writing, if that makes sense. And I do attribute that the soul of my writing to Arif, who taught me how to do it. Not the writing, but he taught me how to access that, you know.
Which is why you want to write the story, isn't it? So,
Right.
Yeah.
because it's really, it's like an homage to him, and it's a thank you to him. Maybe it's a little, like a Mr. Holland's opus, kind of thing, and
It's I mean, I'm trying to think of something that I might compare it to. I don't know. Like, I don't want it to be one of those and no offense to these types of movies, but I don't want it to be one of those the good teacher comes and changes the hearts of the bad students. Like, I don't want it to be that at all. And I want it to be something that starts almost that way, but then transcends that with just such fucking attack. And I really want to shape that into something bigger.
Phil is calling it, maybe it's going to be the friendly whiplash.
I love it. Yeah. Friendly whiplash.
Phil also asked, are you asked for comps for your Nicholl script, and if so, what those might be?
That's interesting.
Am I asked for what?
For comps, like if this meets that.
Oh yeah, comparisons.
Yeah.
For the Nicholl script?
Yeah, Ramesh, stop trying to be so Hollywood. I mean, really.
I'm just asking a question that was asked.
All right, well, whatever. You're so pretentious.
For me to hear this stuff, I don't know the lingo. Like I said, I'm new, right? So comps. If I'm comparing Karate Kid meets Terminator, I don't know.
That's interesting. Ramesh, what would you, if you had to come up with
remember This Boy's Life?
Sure.
The De Niro, was it De Niro? Leonardo DiCaprio and
Leonardo DiCaprio. It was like the Tobias Wolff.
Right, exactly, right. Yeah. So that sort of came to mind when I read it, and because it sort of deals with.
No. I just got one. Sorry, I'll save it.
Go ahead, let's hear it.
Bicentennial Man meets Precious.
I'm sorry, what was the second title?
Precious.
Yes.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
You gotta love those extremes.
Right.
That's when they work the best, I think. Sometimes,
Right.
You laughed out of the room. It's Bicentennial Man meets Precious. I mean, just imagine that fucking pitch meeting, right?
Well, again, there's not a lot of. There was a book that I read. I remember when I was a kid, and I don't remember all the details, but it was called The Kryptonite Kid, and I think it was about a kid who was abused, who would see himself as being Superman. So
nice.
So it was sort of the same kind of concept, and but I read it a long time ago. I mean, like many years ago. So I don't really recall everything about it, but it has very much sort of. In some ways, this is the kind of movie that like the Europeans might make, and it's because it has that kind of feel to it a little bit, and but it's unique.
It is, and it's also a very. I can see this playing at Sundance.
Oh yeah, something like I could totally see this as a movie, right?
Right.
It's
Absolutely.
It's like I read a lot. Again, like it's going to be a tough sell,
right?
But regardless, I read it and I'm like, like this could totally be a movie.
Right.
Which a lot of Nicholl scripts you read and you go, this will never be a movie.
Right. This one was.
Yeah, but again, the thing that this script did, which is what all of you need to be doing, which is imperative, is you must be moving the reader.
Absolutely.
You must move the reader, whatever that means. You don't have to move a reader to tears the way BYRON's script did. You can move them to laughter, move them to fear, move them to anger, but you must make the reader feel something, because that's what people remember. That's what I always say. It's the thing that I remember from reading a script. I've read scripts 30 years ago, and I can't necessarily give you all the details, but I can tell you how I felt about it, meaning like how it made me feel.
Right.
And the scripts that I don't remember are the ones that don't make me feel anything. And the ones that make you feel are the ones that you remember. And so, and it's very difficult to get an emotional response without being manipulative either, you know.
Right.
So because then you're like, oh God, this just feels so syrupy, and but that wasn't the case here at all.
I think if you're manipulating, I mean, that's like hack territory, and you got to be fucking careful of that. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
in my opinion, like you want to be real to the point that you can without fucking up your story, if that makes sense.
There's nothing
Yeah.
syrupy about this. I mean, I started, to be honest with you, I started reading it while I was watching a cricket match in Tasmania, and I freaking love cricket, and I actually shut the game off to continue to read your script because it just drew me in so completely.
So this is how you know, by the way, if Ramesh turns off the cricket match while he's reading your script, then you know the script is good. If he leaves it on,
because I was like, fuck it, I'll just watch the highlights in the morning, which I did.
Yeah.
But that's what. There was nothing syrupy about it. It's not like sentimental. Every emotion is earned in this thing.
Yeah.
Our ambassador, Annie Morgan, says,
you.
I was thinking The Color Purple meets Last Action Hero. That's kind of interesting.
I love both those films. I like that comp. That's good.
That's interesting. Yeah, so it's kind of fun sometimes to think about comps. But yeah, this is unique, and it is difficult. I can't think of very many films where abuse is this vividly portrayed. I mean, I'm sure there are, but I can't think of too many, to be honest. You know, even a movie like Sybil, which, you know, was made for TV, which, you know, was sort of pretty explicit in its final scene. You know, where she's like strapped up, and, you know, it's pretty horrific. But here, there is violence being perpetrated against a child, and it's severe. It is bone-breaking violence, and I can't think of too many movies like that.
No, not. I mean, that scene. And I won't go into detail about the scene, but the scene where, you know, it all happens at the, you know, it was. I initially thought it was fantasy, and then I'm like, holy shit, this isn't. And it is.
Yeah, that's what I said before too.
Right.
Yeah, I was like,
it's tough. It's tough, but at the same time, I liked the fact. Actually, I love the fact that you didn't veer away from the realism of it. You didn't sugarcoat it. You didn't.
It's not sugarcoated.
No, I was a journalist for 20. I was a journalist for 20 years, and I have covered countless child abuse cases. And I have read the reports, I have seen the photographs of the children who've been abused. And I know how real that is. And that is what I felt when I read your script.
Yeah, and that's, I think, what makes it tough. You know, I think it makes it tough for production. You know, it's like, I don't really know how much people would actually want to see that either.
It's one of the reasons that I have the, you know, for example, I make a couple of writer decisions there, right? Style choices, the narration, page 1 is, it says older Jamie, like, you know, it's, this narrator is the kid grown up. So that to me is saying, okay, here's, the kid doesn't die. You know, the kid's going to be okay. That was the intent of that anyway. And yes, I wanted you to have the powerful emotional experience as you go through, but I didn't feel like this needed to be a thriller. I felt like if you want a thriller, I'll make a thriller, but, you know, this isn't really that. So it was okay to say this kid lives. That was number 1. And number 2 was making the kid a robot during some of the most violent scenes. You wouldn't actually have to put a kid actor through that, because if I put a human kid actor in that situation, getting the shit kicked out of them or whatever, you know, what's happening to the child, I felt really bad just about putting a real human through that, you know. And I also thought about studios might say it's too much, you know, you have a human you're seeing this happen to a child, it's too much. And I got that, you know, I did think about that, and making Jamie into an actual robot for some of those more violent scenes was not a way out of the emotional power of it, but a way to view the emotional power from the outside versus having it take you over and actually hurt you. I don't want to hurt the audience. That was another thing. I didn't want to actually have people come away from this damaged, So
Well, I
there's
gotta
a
say,
bit
it's
there's a
pretty
bit of
traumatizing. I mean, it is
yeah,
pretty traumatizing. I mean, it is. I mean,
it's right.
yeah. There's no way around it. It's traumatizing, and but again, I really think that that's where the power is here. And again, it's
Absolutely.
like I don't read a lot of scripts like this, where they really confront this just head on, and
Right.
Yeah.
it's not a chicken shit approach. It's like, look, like this is it.
Right.
And it makes us care so much more.
Right.
Also, I think,
Which also makes the catharsis at the end all the more rewarding.
exactly. I mean, that's why you're sobbing at the end.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Somebody asks, is it weird that a lot of Nicholl scripts would never be movies? And I would say not really, because it's not weird that like most scripts don't become movies.
And I don't think that's Nicholl's goal anyway.
That's not their goal, correct? Right. Their goal is not production. Their goal is simply to nurture good writers.
Right.
And that's their goal. And that's what they're doing.
We found an amazing writer. We're going to introduce them to you, and you take it from here.
Right.
And they help you by, they're lining you up with good press. And I was on a Movie Maker magazine podcast. I was speaking with Tim Malloy. I was speaking with
that's fun.
With Tony Myers with the Go Into the Story and the trades, right? And so they introduce you to these people that for me it's all new to me, and I'm meeting these people and just talking to them, having conversations with them behind the scenes is really cool too. That's it's neat for me that they're reading it and they're loving it, and it's good.
And also another thing about the Nicholls is that even if the Nicholl winning scripts don't get made into movies, a lot of the Nicholl winners are now working screenwriters.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, that's probably the case most of the time.
Right, exactly, which is in the end the ultimate goal anyway. So even if the scripts don't get made, these guys and the men and women are still writing, and they're on shows and they're running shows, and
that's right.
Writing books.
And that should ultimately, the goal of anybody, especially for the people who are watching this now. Yes, I understand that you all want to have your movies made. Of course you do. But the more realistic goal is to get a job, is to work.
Yeah. Right.
And so that's, the Nicholl is truly the most exalted platform to where one can be introduced to the industry.
Right.
And also, like, if they know that you're a good fucking writer and you can get a job writing someone else's idea, then you've got a movie out there, then you can level up and do something original. I mean, that's absolutely, take the fucking job. I mean, I will as soon as I get it. Although you're not allowed to take a job and do your fellowship year. That's another thing.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, they're like, no, you're working for us this year. So that's
okay.
That's interesting.
Part of
okay.
It. Yeah.
So then what would happen? What would happen if you were offered a job for like $1 million? Could you then bow out of the fellowship?
Yeah, what you can do is you can stall the fellowship. So you can say, can I stop doing my fellowship right now and then continue it once I've got this job completed? They'll allow you to do that.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So you can take a job. You just have to make sure that everybody's on board with you stalling it for a little while and then come back to it, right?
Is your contact person Joan? Is it Joan Way and Chris? I mean, who are the contact people that sort of deal with?
Yeah, Joan and Chris and Lydia, and there's been a few people who are involved with the actual sort of production of us winning, in getting us introduced to the right people and in the right spots, and all awesome people, by the way. And I'm not saying that to kiss ass. I just really like them, and I really like the committee, and people, you're in the room with people all of a sudden, and by in the room I mean on Zoom, but you're in a private conversation with the person who shot Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and they're going, tell me some visual concepts that you had for Jamie when he becomes a robot. And you're like, fucking God, did you just ask me that? Right? And it's like, I'm a movie nerd. You know, I may not know all the details, but I'm just like, how is this fucking happening right now? And I'm like, yeah, he actually becomes a robot. Absolutely. Tell me more about Blade Runner, you know. Like, it's just sort of like you're in that company, you know, and that's the real prize. There is you're talking to people, and you have the ear, and you have the words and the knowledge and the wisdom of people who've been there for the greats, you know.
Absolutely. You know, we've discussed this in the past, that the very first Nicholl Award was at Stanford, right?
Yes, right.
It was only for Stanford students, and then
I think it was only for Stanford, like film writing student, like screenwriting students.
And of course, it was Jeb Stewart, right? And he was one of the fellows the very first year, correct? Isn't?
Yeah.
He revealed that to us here, and then it eventually was open to university, probably film schools all around the country, and then maybe just university students around the country, or maybe even around the world. And then only later on did it open up to everybody.
Right.
You know, so it's had a very interesting sort of genesis, and you know, it's like the thing about winning the Nicholl is that, you know, your script was one of 5 out of over 8,000, right? So your script has been vetted. You know, it's been vetted, and a lot of people love the fact that a script has been vetted. And that's always, I think, the plus of any screenwriting contest. That, you know, even if it's the Acme screenwriting contest and you've won it, it's the idea that that script was vetted. But Nicholl is different, just because it has that seal of approval from the Academy, and those final judges they're serious. They're big name people in this industry, and so so you're vetted at even a higher level as well. So so it really is a badge of honor. Somebody said that there. Grandma G said it's a badge of honor. Phil wants to just make sure, Ramesh, that your house isn't on fire.
No,
and, no, we know.
Well, it's this room, but
all right. Well, listen, we have kept Byron and all our members on way too long, but I could talk to you for hours. Let us know. So, like, if you're going to end up doing a reading or something, could we all see it? You know, would it be on Zoom? You know, like, that would be cool.
Any readings that take place are going to be, I guess they're going to be made public, but I don't know if, like, even if I'm going to be invited to see them live, you know, I don't know, but I mean, I would like that very much, but yeah, I don't know.
Well, we want that for you, so we're all gonna put out that energy, and of course, we want you to share anything with us. So, because it would be great if we could all just tune in, you know, to see a scene or two read from it would be great.
Sure.
I would love it also. So yeah, I mean, hopefully we hear more from this script in particular, but yeah, I mean, I've got lots more where that came from, and I'm fucking fast too. So that's an ad.
We've heard. So listen, Byron's a group member, and so you can you know, you can throw stuff down in the comments, and I'm sure that he'll go through them later on and see all the. I'm not
gonna look at a fucking thing.
You are so full of shit. I know you will. I just know you will. And but yeah, I mean, look, you know, so many people want to read your script, so you know, there's going to be a lot of that shit's going on. You know, something. I think you got to find it. Yeah. I'm sure it's out there somewhere. We got it.
Right.
We got it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think if you can find it, I think you should read it. I really do.
It's a terrific piece of writing. It really is.
Yeah, you will really, really be moved, and you'll really, truly see why it won the fellowship. And I have read 100,000s of Nicholl scripts over the years, not just winners, but lots and lots of entry scripts. And so I know from where I speak. And like, I just totally get it. When it was done, I knew exactly how I would have judged this. Exactly how I would have judged it. I would have scored it very, very high. So congratulations to you again. And we're so happy for your success. We're so happy, of course, that you're part of our group. And so everybody, send your love to Byron, and we're going to see him around again. Maybe we're going to do a part 2 soon, and just, you know, to play catch up, if you don't mind. And
Sure.
Is there anything else that you want to say, Byron?
Yeah, listen, y'all are out there trying to write like fucking other people, and I've seen it, you know. And we're talking about comps, like, what is it? I watched something that was successful, and I want to write the next successful film, so I'm gonna write something that's a lot like that film. Listen, every idea is used, right? But you're not used. You're the only fucking distinct original thing about you. So you should tap into yourself, know yourself as much as you possibly can. And if you want to put that into a script, that's where your voice is. If you're struggling to find your voice, that's where it is. You know, I found my voice with this script. This script is where I found my voice. I didn't know what it was before this, right? So just tap into it. And I'm not saying everybody go out and write an autobiography. I mean, your life isn't that fucking interesting. Get over yourself. But like, think of something that you really, really, really love or really hate, and write a script about that. That's what I have to say. I love you.
Yeah.
Take care of yourselves.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you
you.
so much, Byron. Thank you so much, Ramesh. Thank you to our co-administrator, Steve Enlow. And most importantly, thank you to all of our members who have tuned in today. And we want to continue to support each other. That's what this group is about. It is about supporting each other. It is about being there for people, exchanging ideas, information, and great words of wisdom from people like our 2021 Nicholl winner, Byron Hamel. So thank you, everybody. We will see you soon for our next live presentation. We don't know what that is yet.
We don't know. I'm working on it.
We will see you soon. Thank you again to Byron Hamel.
Thank you. And